Looking for real stories that lift you up and light a fire inside? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Liam, thank you so much for joining our podcast today.
Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that you're here. I don't think most of the people in the audience know who you are. Can you maybe share a little bit about yourself, like about your background and about maybe some of the things that you're up to or how you got from before to today? Do you like the audience to know?
Yeah, so I was born in Baghdad, Iraq, as a minority in Chaldeans are Neo-Babylonians who still speak Aramaic. So I came here age 10 to the United States, to Michigan. Just grew up, trying to acclimate, trying to understand who I am, and knowing early on that I did want to be a writer. And knowing that, I guess somehow I just jumped into it as one of the directors I spoke to the other day said, you have the tendency to plunge into things. So I guess I plunged into my work. So to date, I've authored 20 books, one which won an Eric Hoffer Award. And I've written and directed 2 feature films. One is a documentary, which is called The Great American Family. It's available on Amazon Prime. The other one, Pomegranate, was just released in March for Women History Month. It's the first Iraqi American feature narrative, and it's led by women talent, and it's won over 40 awards so far.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I didn't know it's possible to win 40 awards.
You have to, you know what? The more awards you want, the more submissions you have to make. It's just a mathematical.
Wow. Well, congratulations to all of that. I was curious to know, to start off, like you mentioned, you were born in Baghdad, Iraq, which obviously is a totally different culture coming to America. I mean, how did you make that shift, like coming here to like a totally different country, totally different culture? What was it difficult making that shift?
Very difficult. I was part of the we were a total of 4 women. Last night we shared our stories at the Charles Wright Museum for African American History. And it was so powerful because you realized how difficult it was to make that shift. I came from a very oppressive regime where being a minority during Saddam's regime, we were non-Baathists. So we were not affiliated with his political regime. And being a woman, so I had all these points against me, especially given that the path that I was going to take, which I didn't know of at the time, but as a writer, as a filmmaker, expressing yourself is not the most highly, let's just say it's not the most applauded thing back in my birth country. So I came from that environment to an environment that was helping me and encouraging me to express myself. And I had no idea that it would be so difficult to do that because I had not wanted to look at what I had experienced or the ancestral narratives that lived within our souls that had to be released and that had to be healed. Additionally, there was this feeling of being torn between 2 worlds, living here and being an American, but then also recognizing and having love for your birth country. The most difficult part of it was when we were at war with each other. That was the most painful and saddest time. So I think part of me becoming prolific, aside from loving to write and to tell stories, had to do with feeling that I'm not going to engage in war. Obviously, that's not what I want, and violence and all the non-peaceful things that I was witnessing. To me, writing stories is healing. It is a form of building bridges, of sharing love and bringing peace in a loving way. And so to me, I'm just pouring out my love in the way I can to help create that balance of all that destruction. The way you balance destruction, or to try to, is to build something beautiful that is opposite of what you're seeing or what you want to see.
So I don't think that many people like watching like the podcast know much about the Chaldeans. Can you share a little bit more about like what is unique about the Chaldeans? How is that like a it's obviously it's a separate group in Iraq and as well as here in the United States. Can you maybe share like explain to people a little more about their heritage?
Yeah, well, Chaldeans are an ancient people that trace their roots to Prophet Abraham, since he was from Ur, land of the Chaldeans. They're tribal, but in the not in the negative sense that people think. Being tribal has a lot of positive attributes, and what it is taking care of each other, being connected to spirit to the point where you believe in a higher being. You also believe that you have certain powers. And Chaldeans from early on, the Neo-Babylonians, they built some of the most amazing things in the world. In ancient Mesopotamia is where writing began. The first writer in recorded history is Enheduanna, a woman from ancient Mesopotamia. She was the daughter of Sargon. She was a poet, a priestess, and the first recorded writer. And actually, she's one of my characters in Pomegranate. So the main character, Niran, is a liberal Muslim woman, a young woman, and she is inspired by Enheduanna. When she discovers her, she realizes, wow, I didn't know that this exists as part of my history. And she starts reading her poetry and sees how Enheduanna, she traditionally before her, it wasn't that there were no writers, there were scribes, many scribes. But the difference is Enheduanna saying her name because she wanted to take ownership of her writing. And that was the first known incident that happened. And then Niran, the main character, is reading about Enheduanna and seeing how powerful she can be within and how her history is not shared, it's not common knowledge for people. Most people have not heard about the Chaldeans outside. The largest population of Chaldeans live in Michigan, the largest population in the world, by the way. Okay. We were second largest up until what happened in ISIS 2014, which caused a lot of Chaldeans to flee the area and to go to different countries. Most of them came to Michigan because there was already an established population here. For thousands of years, different groups have tried to destroy our stories, and we've had to try to continue them in some way or another elsewhere. And now we're doing so in Michigan. But unfortunately, aside from the state, very few people know about us, that we exist, or they only think that we exist in history books. But we are still alive and through resilience have been able to continue our heritage and to tell our stories. And we are very, by the way, if people were to read about us and to see the things and the lifestyles that we've led and how strong our resilience is, there's so much to learn from our group. Similarly, like the Native Americans and other ancient natives of different lands, all lands had natives in them.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And you mentioned about Native Americans. I know you studied like many different types of spiritual systems. Have you studied, you studied shamanism, right?
Yes, I've had teachers very early on. My first teacher, spiritual teacher, was a man, Narendra Kumar. He was a man from India. After his teachings, he taught me about meditation. And then after his teachings, there was an elderly man who has since passed away, who was Native American. And he taught me he had studied with the Tibetans. And he taught me about energy work and how energy work, how you can choreograph energy. Then I moved on, I got married, had kids. I was just doing my own thing for a while until I came across Lynn V. Andrews, who taught shamanism. But the reason I connected with her was for a totally different reason. I was what I thought was suffering writer's block. There was a story that I was trying to tell that I had such a hard time telling. And I came across this book called Writing Spirit, where Lynn Andrews talks about her Native American teachers. She also talks about shamanism and very odd words that I had never heard before that I thought, what the heck does this have to do with writing? Like, this makes no sense. But yet, why am I even attracted to this weird book, right? So I called her for some literary advice. And the next thing I know, she was tapping into periods of my life where I had experienced trauma, where others kind of like swept under the rug. And Lynn didn't sweep this under the rug. She listened to my story in a way that I needed someone to listen to it. And she recognized the trauma, how those particular traumas affected me as a writer, as a storyteller, as a woman. That was life-changing. This was in 2011 that I had my first call with her. She has since passed away. About 2 years ago, she passed away. I got involved in her school. That was a 4-year school where additional women helped me really connect to my roots as a Chaldean, as a Neo-Babylonian, as a Christian. You know, people have so many misunderstandings about the different energy teachings, but all it does is really connect you to who you are. And when you know who you are and understand and embrace who you are, then you can embrace others. So it's not about changing you, and it's not about changing your religion or getting involved in certain aspects that people give negative descriptions to. But it's getting you to understand who you are and how what role you play in the universe. And that's what that school did for me. And I did not, by the way, I was talking to some of the people that I'm still involved with in the school, and I said, yeah, I didn't even, in my second year of school, I went and Googled shamanism to see what it even meant. Because I just figured, like, at that point, I was in the school because of her and because of her teachings, but I didn't. Thank God I don't get caught up in these labels that stop us from getting to know each other and from growing. So I went and Googled it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness I didn't look up the definition before I got involved, because I might have been intimidated and not really understanding what all this was about. But it's about the ancestors, connecting to higher spirits, of understanding ourselves, and that there are so many energies that are higher than us, and being true to who we are. And those were the teachings that helped me have confidence in my work, and to just say, you know what, I am going to write what I believe in. And that has gotten me in many good places. It has also helped others who have watched what I've done and felt and understood themselves better through the work that I was given. So when my teachers would give me advice, when we were on these mentoring calls and whatever they gave me, I said, hey, I'm writing all this down because others are going to benefit from what you're saying to me. And they were so proud and felt so honored to be part, to be documented in that, and that they knew, aside from Lynn, 2 of my 4 main mentors have passed on, and their teachings have not. Their teachings are still there.
That's really amazing. Can you maybe explain, like, how does like the shamanism and the principles and teachings influence like your creativity and your personal healing?
It influences because I have honored who I am by using the tools to get to know who I am, connecting with my higher self, connecting to my father. I remember that we had a meditation where I had the chance to connect with my father. And then I started better understanding who I am and my heritage. And the deeper I looked, I started, when somebody listens to your story and understand the importance of who you are here on earth, then you start understanding other people's stories. So I started understanding my father's stories and why he made the decisions he made, my mother's stories and why she made. Then I started understanding, hey, my healing abilities, because once you heal, then is just part of everybody's process. Once you heal, you're able to a certain degree, just even by being yourself, you can become a healer to others just by sharing. Then I started looking deeper at his healing attributes. He was a bone setter. He was the head of the accounting department at the railroad station and Baghdad railroad station. But on the side, and without charging. He was a bone setter. So people who had any kind of ailments, even broken ligaments or whatever it was, they would go to him. And I remember as a child, sitting there with my mom bringing a big tub of hot water and the soap that was made from olive oil and a lot of different natural herbs that people still use in Iraq. And we used it to wash our hair, to wash our body, for everything. Like we did all these things that we're using today, all these fancy things. Over there, we had one bar of soap for everything. And he used that with towels to help people heal. And then I learned, and he did other things. He was a translator, and he did all these things to benefit others. And his blessing and the blessings that he did for others continued onto us. Then I found out that my great grandmother Maria, she was a great healer. As a woman back in Iraq, that was a big deal, living in a village. And I realized when I started understanding me and my ancestors better, it took so much of the pain and the confusion away. And when you get involved in this type of energy work, where you understand the importance of connecting to your ancestors, I think what happens is you become a better human being for society. And then there's less tendency to fall in the hands of people that can manipulate you. Oftentimes I see so much confusion in this world. It's pretty sad, that you see and people taking advantage of that by telling you, follow this follow this path. You end up trusting your instincts. You develop a better relationship with your surroundings, including your families. What I loved about the teachings through Lynn is it came from the feminine sacredness. And so I was encouraged to heal within my own family. My relationship with my husband improved, with my children. And initially I used to be afraid to share, like if my husband and I were having some issues, I was so afraid to share it with the women because I said, I'm like, oh my God, they're probably these like feminist women that are just gonna, maybe tear the situation apart and, encourage a divorce or something like that. And I didn't want to divorce my husband. I just wanted to work things out. And it was really the opposite of what I had expected. They are about love and community and working for your higher good and realizing that you're becoming your best also changes the people and the situations around you so that everybody starts shifting. You're shifting energy. It's really, you know, and also I think nowadays people wanting everything so quickly. I'm so grateful that I had to spend that many years in the school. Even though Lynn has passed on, the school is still available for people, but I feel so fortunate that I was involved during her time. And then I ended up mentoring her apprentices. And now to continue her legacy, I am having a retreat at Columbia Retreat Center in Michigan. It starts May 29th and until June 1st. And this retreat is really to help, to create opulence in your life, whether it's through physical manifestations of opulence or inner opulence. And I feel so honored to be able to do that. But when it comes, I think, from the sacredness, there's a different element in it. And also when you're not trying to do this very quickly, like, oh, I just learned something about shamanism and I'm just going to like magic, just create something overnight because I took this 2-hour workshop. It's not like, nothing is like that really. I mean, you can get the calling or you can be transformed, yes, in those 2 hours, just like I felt a calling when I read her book. But this work is more, it's also very scientific, by the way. Energy work. I'm working on a book right now that shows the correlation between these ancient teachings, including shamanism and science. And Jesus said, you will do things greater than I. He was a mystic. And when he gave us that power, you will do things greater than I. How is that possible if not for us to learn? How did you do? How did this person, magnificent person, do what he did? And then he's giving us permission to look into that. I think that's part of why the West right now is able to do such amazing things, is because they feel like they have that permission to look into that and see how can they invent and build and create beautiful things. And, of course, it could be used for bad, but that's when you do unto others what you want them to do unto you. So if you create any negativity where you are going to create destruction, look at all these teachings. They're in the Bible. These are things, they're in various religions. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You create destruction, this is what's going to come to you. You put energy, that even with shamanism, you put energy in Native Americans, the way their mentality works and the way their spirit is, whatever you do, it goes 7 generations forward. You think of the 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. Why you do that? Because you realize whatever you're creating right now, it's for the good. You're remembering your ancestors and what they did and what they were trying to teach. And then you remember whatever you're doing now is going to affect your children, grandchildren, other people's children and grandchildren, and you take care of what you're forming in this universe while you're alive.
Wow, that's really amazing. So you're saying like you kind of incorporate some of your ancient Chaldean teachings and mysticism as well as shamanism into your everyday, not just your everyday life, but also like your books and your movies. Am I correct with that?
Definitely. I was taught the way to wash dishes in a sacred way. Not to feel that you just want to get this done and get that done and even whether you are washing dishes or sitting down to write a book, the sacred act behind that has to be the same. Whether I am dealing with Daniel on an interview or I am dealing with somebody who is homeless, the respect, the dignity has to be the same. That's how deep that type of teaching is. And that's what we need to focus. We get so lost in all these bigness and just getting things done and building bigger buildings and there's nothing wrong with that. But are we building it with the sacredness at heart, with that intention? Are we treating the people who are taking care of these buildings with that sacredness? Or are we just building the buildings and saying, okay, you people just make sure that everything is running good and it doesn't matter how you feel and how burnt out and how unhealthy this might be for you. Go to work. Do it this way. When there's so much sacredness involved, you know what? You don't even need to ask the people who are working for you to work for you. Want to. They believe in the work so much and they want to. And if you are dealing with people that don't want to, you just separate and go your separate way. But still, there has to be that dignity. But it's not like hammering over people's heads, which is, again, this is what the area where I came from, where they felt that the way to get people to extract work from them is to beat them over the head and being oppressive and, that kind of control system that, sorry to say, has not gotten that region very far. That's just the truth of it all.
Wow, that's really amazing. So I want to start talking about like your new movie Pomegranate that's coming out. Some so can you tell a little bit about like what inspired you to create Pomegranate, and can you tell us a little bit about the background about what it's about? Because I'm sure most people in the audience probably have no idea what is a Pomegranate film about.
Sure. So when we were saying earlier, so at that point in my life, I had just finished, or I had finished. I had completed my 4-year school with Lynn Andrews, and President Donald Trump was elected president, because this was in 2016. I started the project. And people were just going at each other, in a negative way. All of a sudden, I saw this split between people to the extent where, they were really hating on each other because of the different political differences. And I thought, Now, in the beginning, I kind of, jumped on that bandwagon and I was kind of posting things. And then I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't really feel good. And I don't know that it's creating what I was meaning to. Like, I just love to create love and unity. So even if I have a political stance, I don't like to get into this warfare, even if it's only on social media. So I had to figure out a way to pull my energy. And again, this is what I learned from this school. I pulled my energy and decided, what am I going to do about this? What would be healing for me? And so I can feel like I'm being active, but not attached to the story. I don't want this story to run me. I wanted to run my own story with this. So I decided to write a script about a Muslim young woman living across the street of a Chaldean young woman, and they have different political views. The Muslim was a liberal, and then the liberal Muslim, and then the girl across the street, the Chaldean, was a conservative Republican. So in the process, I started having so much fun expressing the different viewpoints, researching the different viewpoints. I would go on social media and see, okay, why is the liberal so against Donald Trump? And then I would go and see, why is the conservative so in love with Donald Trump? What is it? These are both good people. So a lot of these people, I knew who they were from both areas, and they are both very good people. They were generous and helpful, and I'm like, well, they're both making sense, but in their head, this side is wrong, and then the other person's head. That was the initial reason. But then there was other things involved where the Muslim young lady, was developing. And I had to pick a character that I wanted to develop. And what was outside of the political sphere, like all of us, we might have political opinions, but we have other lives. We have partners or spouses or children or parents to take care of, whatever it is. We're not sitting there walking around just thinking what's happening in politics every day, right? We have lives. And so this Muslim girl had a life. And her life was that she is a new refugee in this country. And she wanting to understand herself better, and where does she want to go? How does she want to grow and develop into her new land? So you could say in some ways she resembles me. And although I'm Christian, I share a lot of the Middle Eastern women's challenge and struggle of being a woman, of wanting to, being a creative, being choosing paths that might not, were not supported by my community because they were not the norm. The norm is that you just grow up, you either become a lawyer or a doctor, if you even study to become anything at all. Of course, nowadays they do, but you don't, being a filmmaker and an author who expresses herself, all these things were not really encouraged. And so I took on, and I love to travel. So I was like traveling and wanting to see the world. And I was open to many different teachings. And I explored, as a journalist, I was exploring what different faiths believe in. I go into a synagogue, into a mosque, into different countries, into different communities. But I knew who I am at the same, and that's, again, I knew who I am, but that doesn't stop me from exploring what God created. God created the whole world for us to see. And so that character, in a lot of sense, what I did, I combined her struggles with the women I know, including myself, and a few other women who can't go out there and say how they feel and what they want. And I combined them, and Niran became a representative of these women. So it might have started on the basis of the elections, but then it turned into something else about women and the women having certain freedoms. Now, the most magical part of it all is that when we were casting for this film, unintentionally, we ended up with a cast of the Muslim family being all Muslim Iraqis, except for the son being Muslim Palestinian. So it was still a Muslim family. the main character, the woman that played Niran, Samia, she's a Muslim from Iraq. And then the woman that played her mom is a real hijabi in person. And she was born in Iraq and came early. I mean, how divine is that? Like, if this is not a divine intervention that got involved. The Chaldean family is all Chaldean. So I just believe that when you work with spirit and you believe in a higher being and you do something for the higher good, the pieces fall together. And especially if you don't try to rush the process. And I love this movie. It's the first narrative and it's led by women. And it was challenging to make because I got to tell you, the community is not supportive. And you know what? People can, take that as this is the truth. They're not supportive. They're afraid of their own stories. They're afraid of women power for whatever reason. But this story needed to be told, and it's now out there. And I'm grateful for all the countries, over 40 awards. And I can tell you, Sweden, Italy, Israel, India, all these different countries that lifted this title, and none from the Arab world, unfortunately. Sadly to say, but that land, like myself, has a lot of healing to go through and to let go of old patterns and old stories and to enter new stories.
Wow. So can you maybe explain some like the different themes or like the cultural tensions that the film kind of explores?
Yeah, the tensions is that this Muslim family, and you know what I love about the movie? The women, they're beautiful, they're smart, they're sassy. Nothing you've seen from about Middle Eastern people in film. You either see victims, okay? The real people have so much heart, they have so much humor, they have so much love. You go into Middle Eastern home and you find the things, and this has been my experience. You find so much love and food and humor, okay? Especially if you go in an immigrant home where, and that's, I'm talking about my family as well. And I bring all this beauty to the forefront. The Chaldean and what happens between Iran and Mary, the Chaldean girl, is that they have political views and they're not afraid to say to each other what they really feel. We are multifaceted, and aside from the theme of the girls being honest about talking about their religion, about their backgrounds as Christians and Muslims, the main character is trying to consider whether or not she wants to keep her hijab. And that's a story that needs to be told. We need to stop pretending that this is not an issue. We have to allow the people, the women who feel they have certain powers and that their story is not being heard, to be heard. It's not a one-way. Right now, only certain voices are being promoted, and it's usually the loudest. And we want to tell this story without being loud, but by being beautiful and creative. That's what Pomegranate is. And the Middle Eastern community, part of the trauma of what I endured and why different teachings helped me is because I was encouraged to speak. I was encouraged to tell our stories, which is the real opposite of what we experience where we're growing up. Now, what happens, even though we come here and we try to acclimate, but trying to change that is not easy. Trying to feel like you can speak your truth is not easy. Women trying to say, we want to have a choice is not easy. But outside, you will see this persona and these masks that say, oh, no, we're fine. We have a choice. We promote women this, and it's not true when you are not promoting a story about Middle Easterners, is it? Actions are louder than words. Going and having these rallies and having these protests where thousands upon thousands of people come out and cheer and whatever there is happening. Why not do that for a film that honors the beauty of the Arab American culture and the beauty of the women of that culture and the beauty of the freedom to choose. We should applaud whoever. We just had the premiere, by the way, in February. We had the premiere in LA. We can tell people we are not the stereotypical people that you think of us as. So, yeah. So people, it's now this film, Pomegranate, is available. It's streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, YouTube, educational institutions, the platforms for those educational institutions in 25 countries, 20, including Israel and including Sweden. There's so many, I can't even say them off the top of my head. However, the effort is going to be increased within the next couple of months in the hopes to reach even a larger audience. So excited. It's just breaking barriers, and I hope it's going to be an inspiration to all the Middle Easterners that feel they have a powerful story inside of them, and to put their resources, their energies, their money to just tell their stories and win people's hearts and win people's understanding through storytelling.
Wow, that sounds so amazing. I can't wait to watch them. You're getting me all excited.
I'll tell you, you're gonna laugh and you're gonna fall in love with the Arab American community through these beautiful families that I portray.
Well, can you maybe also share with us some like the challenge you faced when creating this film? Anything from like the funding to casting, cultural sensitivities, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, all of the above. First, the budget. The budget, I can't even talk about that. That was the hardest, because we had to cut, as an ultra low budget film, we had to keep cutting budgets. And then all the departments were falling on top of me, and the wonderful team. Oh my God, the team that we had, they were amazing. They were like a family, and they stepped in whenever we needed something that we did not have the proper, resources for, whatever it was. Everybody stepped in. And when I say that, I am not exaggerating. And, I'm in the process of writing a blog post. I wrote a blog post for International Women's Day, which was March 8th. I'm writing a blog post to honor the men that have been part of this process, who kept me going. They really were my backbones. Aside from, of course, my husband allowing for me to pursue this and just basically staying out of my way as much as possible, that's all I wanted, is just to have that space to be able to pursue what I wanted. But Scott Rosenthal, the producer of Home Alone and Mystic Pizza, he's our executive producer. Sam Sacco, he's our producer. He's in LA. Jamal Adams, our editor. Kevin Howitt, our cinematographer. These men, when I was like ready to give up, and they made such light of what the situation that I was going through, which gave me an indication they had so much belief in me, that I kept going. They kept checking on me to make sure I would not give up on this project. They were involved until the very, even if the ones that, if they weren't involved from the very beginning, they were till the end. Oh, Dr. Stan Williams, I just talked to him yesterday. He worked with films with Will Smith. Will Smith endorsed his book on filmmaking, on storytelling. And he's a dear friend. And he was involved in the process. And I thought, we give such honor to women, which yes, but what about the men that are surrounding these women that really could care less if you even mention their name? And of course, this includes when I look at the role that my father played and my brothers, and just looking. But we have to really honor both sexes, because they're important for each other. And I learned that right now the most through this film, because it was those men. It might have been led by women talent on the set, and the story is about these women, but the men that kept this really just contained and made sure that it was finished complete. Oh, even my goodness, the producer's rep who found me a distributor, he was Glenn Reynolds in LA. And on and on. I mean, I can't, I'm sure there's like so many of them that, yeah, I think they're just as important. And this is what I love about the teachings that I went through. It really was not to condemn anybody, to understand the energies and the sacredness that we all play, and to recognize how important men's role are in our how they help women and how women help men. These are all arts that are being lost. These were all parts of the ancient teachings, whether Babylonian, whether in the Hebrew tradition, whether in the Muslim tradition, whoever, there are these balances that are just really being really out of whack right now because people are just trying. It's more about, seems like, power than the understanding of how the universe harmoniously works together. You know, yeah, led by women. We're being very honest, and ooh, that's so taboo for the for our community for women to do that. But they're missing the point, and they're missing the opportunity that this is a beautiful story that is being represented about them. And they've always, since I got involved in film, I started film school in 2004. It was a 1-year film school, and during that time, the Arab American community and my community, which I'm a part of them and they're a part of me with, regardless of religious background, we're always complaining that our stories are not being told. And then when we do try to tell our stories, they're just always scrutinized and there's a pushback. We have to look within and really reflect, what is it that we're trying to do here? In the long run, what is going to serve us?
Wow. I mean, everything you're talking about seems like it's so powerful. Like this isn't just like a typical Hollywood movie.
No.
It's like animation.
I didn't go and direct random films. I direct with intent. My 2 feature films, even my first feature film, The Great American Family, had the same power to it. And it was released in 2018, but it's still relevant today because about the social system and how certain groups, and especially minority groups and the jail system, how it negatively is affecting our society, and how the government has used its power to put certain people that they can have power over. And so when I do something, it's for a higher good. Let's trace this back to Prophet Abraham from land of the Ur of the Chaldeans. Tribal people, this is a mentality that comes from ancient times, where when you do something, whether you're a writer, podcaster, a healer, whatever you do, there has to be a higher good to it. This is just part of also in our blood. So when I was younger, my understanding, I want to be a writer. But then I soon discovered I want to be a writer, but how does that serve? I mean, I don't want to just be always just self-expressing. Up to what point? I mean, how, okay, so I'm going to express myself once, but what is the deeper meaning? The deeper meaning in anything in life is that it ends up serving somehow or another. Somehow or another, somebody has to, the universe, whether it's the animals, the earth, another human beings, it has to be of service. Once you connect what God created your talent to be, once that's connected to a service, oh my goodness, you fly with your work. Your work just that's success. To me, that's success, regardless of the financial situations but you become rich inwardly and outwardly, because then God provides everything that you need to get what you need done. And that's success. What more is success than that? But, and you don't stop because you realize, oh, if I'm serving, well, I can't. That's how I'm going to use the rest of my life, is to tell these stories to serve. But, we don't have to serve. I get this. The word service might seem like, oh, boring. No, I had so much fun creating the story. I was laughing in the theater in the premiere. I was laughing so much. And the different scenes with everybody. And Zayn Shami, she's amazing. She goes to me, I was hearing you laugh, and it made me know how good I was. That the fact that you've seen this movie 100 times and you can still laugh at the because she's a comedian in real life. She says the fact that you can still laugh at those scenes, and I said, yeah, because it's so fresh and innocent and beautiful, And so I'm being rewarded by telling these important stories because they're beautiful. Whatever the pushback, it's okay because the relationship is first and foremost with the universe, with God. That is where our relationship first and foremost is, that we serve with. We make sure that it benefits our families, that it's not hurting or damaging people. And then you go on to the next step. But the first and foremost is that communion with God. When you have that, and you make sure that you don't hurt anybody, and that you think about what you are creating, this is what you're going to leave when you're dead. Is it going to be benefiting anybody or hurting anybody? That's the only question you need to ask yourself as you're creating and building. Right now, my engaging in this conversation with you, that's a blessing. So that's, when I agree to interviews, it's got to be with the intent. Is this going to be serving or hurting? We're serving right now. Whoever, we don't know who, it doesn't matter, but we're serving, maybe even just each other, which is good enough.
Well, what do you hope that the audiences, especially for people who are not familiar with the Iraqi or like the immigrant experiences, take away from this film?
I want them to realize, to take away with, oh my God, this community is so beautiful. They have such an amazing history. I want to go and learn about their history. Who is unheard? What? The first writer in recorded history. What else did they invent? Oh, they invented the wheel. Oh my goodness. These people, what is about their history outside of what we're being told on TV? Oh, it's the cradle of civilization. And this Muslim family, it's never like any Muslim family I've seen on TV. Are there real Muslim families like that? Yeah, the majority of Muslim families are like the ones that are being represented because it's an authentic story. Everything that is in my story came either from my real life, from friends' real life. I didn't pick everything. I pick it up from the community. And, we are loving, we are fun. I want people to see that side of us so that they can see the human side of the Arab Americans and not just categorize us as this or that, to see the human side. Also, for the Arab American community, to see themselves being portrayed in a non-stereotypical way, lack of budget, not to blame, to put that effort, because if somebody like that, a woman like me who did not get really the support that I thought I would, but with the grace of God and being patient, because it took so many years, was able to make it, you're able to do it, especially with today's technology and everything available. And also, if this is an important thing for you, team up and help. If you don't want to make a film, but you like that your stories for your community to be out there and you have money, give it to the friend that is making a film. Contribute to this cause. It's gonna elevate your name a million times higher. Like here I am trying to break all these stereotypes with this film. And then when you get pushback, you're telling me that the very stereotypes I'm trying to break, you're trying to enforce. And then you're saying we're being stereotyped. Really self-reflect. Self-reflect.
So can you maybe share out with us about like how like you being like a journalist and author has shaped you like approach to writing and directing the Pomegranate film?
Yeah, I study a lot before I do something. I consider myself like a slow creator. I think maybe, I don't know who I'm comparing myself to, but it feels like it takes so much time for me I have to put so much energy into something, like study it. I studied a lot about the Republicans and the Democrats, just as an example, to see, to regardless of my political views, I wanted to see other views, even if they were similar to mine. Like, okay, where did this come from? To research it. So being a journalist helped a lot because I think my biggest journalistic exercise, aside from writing articles for newspapers and magazines, was The Great American Family, which took me 6 years to write the book, and that's what won an Air Award, and then 8 years to do the documentary. And that's because I had to study this 3-week trial, and the files were like this thick. I had to read over them like maybe 10 times to understand what was happening and to catch the evidence and piece it together. And then I had to do interviews. And the editor said, well, I don't know how he was involved in boxing before, but he said, well, a boxer wouldn't really say that or do that or something like that. But I was basing it on a boxer that I know that was a professional boxer. And I thought, I don't know when people make these, but I research and I study these. So being a journalist makes you study people and study dialogues. And I think people just need to better know themselves, because they'll say things that think they know things just by being, because they are that way. They have a hard time understanding that other people, we're the same, and that we are human beings who have dreams and aspirations and feelings and all this. But what about our differences? We have so many differences that we're not going to be able to share these differences unless, at the Charles Wright Museum yesterday, the person that led it, her name is Satur Shakur, and she's a filmmaker too. She's this Twisted Storyteller Society. She founded that. And she said, your part, she was telling the audience, she said, you have the most important part, and that's to listen. And yeah, listening to other people is what's going to help us, instead of fighting and just feeling like we have to get our point, but to listen. I feel like being a journalist has helped me listen. I've interviewed, I'm sure, like over 1,000 people in my life. Articles, the writings that I have done come from a combination of different people. But that's because I love people. I love true stories more than made up stories. So I always felt like, why would I make up a story if real life is so fascinating? And I love all the characters surrounding me. Why would I have to look for? So I listen very closely to all my surroundings. I want to be as authentic as possible. And there's a fear in being authentic. I think there's a fear like, oh, you're telling the truth. This is how it is. Yeah, that's what made my film successful, telling things how it is. Because I didn't try to pretend we are different than what the story was saying. We are those people. And I love that about us. We have to accept who we are. That's another attribute to success. You have to see who you are, accept who you are, as you are trying to change who you are, if you choose to change who you are.
Now, like you've also mentioned to me that you've authored 20 books. Is that correct?
Yeah, my decision to be a storyteller, I love books. The Great American Family, I wrote the book first and made the documentary second, but they complement each other. Pomegranate was a script. After it was completed, the script in it was chosen quarterfinalist by Francis Coppola of Viotrop magazine. That's when later we turned it into a film. But the way I prepared for Pomegranate before we shot the film, I wrote a book. I wrote the novel Pomegranate in order to better prepare for directing. So at the time, I had one of our team members who was working on the film said, this is the first time you're directing. I said, well, I've directed a documentary. He said, well, this is different. You're directing actors. Okay, true. But I have over 33 nieces and nephews, and I feel like I directed them, and I've directed, I've had leadership roles. So I felt like, okay, shouldn't be too hard. But you know what? The best way I'm going to be able to direct them, I'm going to write a book to get closer to the story and to the characters, because books get you more intimate to the story and the characters. I decided to write a book, and I had all the cast read it so that they can better understand their characters. And you know what? When it came time to film it made the process so much easier. I love writing books. I will continue as I work right now. I am starting part 2. I'm starting the script for part 2. As I do that, I am working on other books as well, because I just love books. I'm just going to continue. And they're going to be about the Chaldean American Iraqi experience, but they're also leaning more and more about the the ancient teachings that I really want to, and the path of consciousness, which is a retreat that I have, and I plan to like restart and write books about that. I want to bring in the scientific aspect of these teachings.
Can you share a little bit about like your journey as an author? Like how did like you start becoming an author? You just like one day said like I'm gonna write a book and you published it, or
I early on said I did feel like I had this calling that that I would become an author. I think after I graduated after I graduated from Wayne State University, I my plan was to go to law school. And I said, I'll write on the side. But I graduated early. I finished like a 4-year degree within like 2.5 years or something. I just like zoomed through the process. There was a period of waiting because law schools always start in the fall. So there was a period of me waiting. During that time, I realized I want to be a full-time writer and I want to travel the world. I started traveling the world. I started taking classes in writing. And yeah, I just, yesterday again, the Dr. Stan Williams, I'm talking to him yesterday about this, and he was telling me, Weam, he was telling me like for the next part, he said, I don't know that I can work with you. I'd love to, help you with revising the story and everything. He goes, I don't know if I can catch up with you. You'd like to jump into things. And I guess that's the way to do things. But, he's an older fan and he wants to take it more slow, but I do plunge into things. I think that when I decide that another, I think, attribute of the Chaldeans is that they're very entrepreneurial. So we're not afraid if we're going to start a project or a business. I'm not intimidated by that. I'm really not. It's more like finding the time, especially for me as a mom. I mean, I take my wife and family mother duties very seriously. So those really come first. So it was just the managing. How am I going to manage that? I think it's just once you decide something to pursue it, but to realize it's work, just like becoming a doctor or whatever, there's a process to follow. Read about how others have done it, see how others, until today I do that because I'll find people that are more prolific than me and see, okay, what are they doing differently? How are their schedules? And usually I like to see how, especially like women do things because they're the ones with the kids and stuff. So I try to see like, how are they doing it and try to implement that. And my routine still is different, but I like to hear these things. It kind of it helps me realize like, okay, there's people also struggling, but they're pushing through that struggle.
like you talked about a little earlier in the interview about writer's block. And I think a lot of writers sometimes have that issue of writer's block. Do you have any like advice to other writers or authors that are experiencing writer's block? Like how can they overcome that?
The easiest way to overcome that is take something important that you want to discuss. Okay, I'll tell you, journaling. People don't give enough consideration and value to, again, real stories, real expressions. Sometimes we try too hard to tell the right story. If you start journaling, you will find, like, if you can find so much richness in the mundane, what people might consider mundane. Start journaling. And you know what? If you're having writer's block, write about why you think you're having writer's block. Use journaling as a way to open avenues for you to understand where you're trying to go. It's like talking to yourself and like a higher and God, in the process, there's only you, God, and your higher self all combined into this paper, and write with the intention that you're going to find the answer in there, and pray on it. Last year I went to London with my son, and I went and visited Barbara Cartland's mansion. Her granddaughter was generous enough to show me her home and the room where she writes. Barbara Cartland is one of the most prolific authors. She's written over 900 novels. And I was asking her, and she would orally like say the story, and she had a secretary type it. And so I asked her granddaughter, I said, what were her other things? And she said, yeah, she would like recite the story, and that works for many people. It hasn't really worked for me. I'm just I started traditionally, like with handwriting and writing behind the computer. But she said something that I had never heard in any interview or anything. She said, yeah, my grandmother, when she would go to sleep, she would talk to God and she would, pray on what she's going to write the next day. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, I have this journal where I pray. Like I would say, if I want to work on chapter 7, I would say, thank you, God, for helping me complete chapter 7. And so when she said that, I only saw the significance of what I was doing, but it was never spoken about. But I do that. I do. I pray on it. I journal about it. Now I've gotten over that. Once you get over that hurdle and you have that communication with your higher self, with your journal, with your prayers, your meditation, however you do it, oh my goodness. Then you were like, okay, I have too much information. When do I have the time to write all these books? That's the stage I'm in now. I want to get as many of these books out before, I leave this earth. I want as many of my projects. That's my goal to do. I guess, I don't know, maybe I have to pray a little bit hard. I feel like they keep stacking up and it's like the time is running out.
What advice would you give to other women, especially like you mentioned from like the Middle Eastern community, who may want to, talk about share their stories, but they feel silenced. They're not sure how they can do that. Do you have any advice to those people? Or to maybe anybody who feel like they don't know how to share their story, like, because they feel like they want to share their story, but they're not sure how, or maybe afraid?
Well, that's when healing is important, because you have to look what we call the dark side to see what is stopping you. The dark side is usually an area of your life. Excuse me. It's usually an area of your life that you don't want to, that is so wounded, you don't want to look there. Because once you look there, it's very painful. But when you're working with healers, they teach you how to look into the dark side, but then not get caught into that. Like, you don't want to stay in the dark side. You just want to see what is it? Where's the pain? It's just like, okay, if you were 100 pounds overweight, you want to lose weight. You have to you have to take accountability. Like, why am I in this place? Some people are in that place because of past abuse and they had to turn to food. I turned to food when I first came to this country, the loneliness, the culture shock, all of this, and food became my comfort. But I had to look into the pain of that in order for me to change those habits. So looking into where does this block come from? In my case, it was realizing that coming from an oppressive regime where I was afraid to tell my truth played a big role in my, it could be, have you experienced rejections? Did your family put you down about the career choices? Did you experience a type of abuse that stops you? Why is this? Maybe you're trying to tell a story that's not even really the story that you want to tell. You're having a writer's block because this story does not belong to you. Like, let it go. Write what you really want to write and you will see yourself go. Some people are just writing things just because, oh, well, this makes money or that genre has succeeded, so I'm going to follow that. That might succeed for a while, but I've also learned that there's some people that get to the point where they feel this is not really what I want to do. It was good. I got the money, but I want to do something more meaningful. I really, really do. And then they'll see that shift might be difficult in the beginning because they want from writing one genre just for the sake of selling books. And then to go to a more meaningful way, there's an adjustment there. There's adjustment when you're pregnant and have a baby, your body goes through all these different things. It takes time. When you're birthing a new routine, a new habit, whatever it is, give yourself the love. I believe that if you give yourself the love necessary, that part of that means being patient with yourself. That's what real love is. Be patient with yourself. And if you're having writer's block, just address it and nurture yourself to see where it's coming from. And force is not going to take that writing block away. You can't.
How does your nonprofit, Unique Voices in Films, support other storytellers?
Well, Unique Voices in Films, I now that I was waiting for the success of my film in order for me to start making it more, I founded it during the time of the Path of Consciousness. And I was having such a hard time getting my films to go forward because with nonprofits, once you start them, then you kind of have to have some kind of a track of making films in order to start getting grants or sponsorships. So for me, I feel like my projects alone have helped other filmmakers. Like, for instance, my editor, Jamal Adams, I recently got the Kresge Fellowship Award. And the first thing I did, they said, well, we're going to have a filmmaker do a little video on you. And I said, oh. And they said, you can pick that filmmaker. I made sure right away to bring him on. So he ended up getting hired for 2 projects. He filmed me and another Kresge fellow. And then he and I are now working on another project. For me, the way to do it is to continue this tribe. You know, the tribe of the Middle East in the past for the Chaldeans were being Chaldean. The tribe in modern days is being where we have the same goals and the love and mission and passion. And we could be like Jamal Adams. I have another team member who is totally white, totally, she's in Colorado, totally wonderful. She's a mom of young kids. I have somebody else who's Chaldean that's local. Again, we had Scott Rosenfeld, he's Jewish. That is a new type of tribe, way where we are working together as filmmakers and making sure that, like yesterday, the storytellers that I shared my story, we said we need to connect, we need to have lunch together. You increase it just by supporting each other. It might not be initially through funding, but supporting their voices. This morning, I think the lady that put this together, Saturi Shakur, and I said, when your film comes out, because she has a film about herself coming out, I'd love to help you promote it. That, you don't even need a nonprofit organization for that. However, having that nonprofit organization will help where, especially Middle Eastern stories that need to be told, I would like to have the active role of helping raise and providing the resources for those kind of opportunities.
So if somebody's interested in watching a Pomegranate film, where can they go to watch the film?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon Prime, YouTube, our distributor, Freestyle Digital Media, has a link to where all the films are being played. So if they look them up, our distributor, then they can see where the film is playing. Again, that's Freestyle Digital Media. But most of the streaming channels, and with the plan that it's going to increase, it's going to come.
So if somebody was interested in connecting with you or supporting your work or learn more about your stories, how can they learn more about you or follow you or ask you questions?
So all my social media is my first and last name, Weam Namou, basically. So that's the handle for all my social media. I do post quite a bit. And they can also, by the way, if they want to follow Pomegranate, there's a Pomegranate page. It's called Pomegranate Movie Official. It's Facebook and Instagram. And my website, there's a contact page that they can contact me from.
Excellent. Well, we need to wrap up this podcast interview. Is there any last minute things you'd like to share with our audience about it's the Pomegranate film, shamanism, being an author, women in general, or anything else that's coming to your mind that you want to share?
I'm just going to share one thing. And this is a teaching, again, it's not only a teaching from my Christian religion, but it's just a powerful teaching that I've had from whether they're Buddhist or other, including Geshe Michael Roach, who encouraged this process of, I really attribute a lot of my success to trying to uplift others. And I think that if you are trying, whatever you are that you're doing, aside from the work involved and focusing on it and everything else that everybody tells you, but just do something for somebody each day that makes a difference. And do it with intent, knowing that, what goes around comes around and it will come back around to you. I think those things are not random. Just do something for somebody. Change the narrative, change the spectrum. Don't dwell on the negative, on what's happening negatively. Be that change, fill that void, and you're going to feel so great about what you're doing. And then you're going to see the blessings just multiply.
Well, Weam, thank you so much for coming on this interview. I really appreciate it. It was so wonderful to talk with you again and listen to about your projects. I'm so excited about Pomegranate. I really hope it's really successful out there, because it sounds definitely very groundbreaking. And I'm so happy that you're putting that out there to share people's stories, and then all the work with your books. It's so amazing. So it's a real true honor to have you here and speak with you and to benefit from all your wisdom, teachings, and experience with everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity. This is the second time you've given me an opportunity to be interviewed and to tell my story, and I appreciate you.